Welcome everyone to a closer look at ForeFlight Dispatch. In this webinar, we are going to walk through a few features of ForeFlight Dispatch and how it can help your team collaboratively plan, support, and brief flights. Let's go ahead and meet our presenters for today. Caitlin and Josh, tell us about yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Galloway. I am the product manager for Dispatch. I am a private pilot, and I have been with ForeFlight since 2015.
Hi, I'm Josh Pava. I've been with ForeFlight for about 5 years. I'm the lead QA on ForeFlight Dispatch. In addition to my duties here at ForeFlight, I also fly Business Aviation and a Gulfstream G450.
In today's webinar, we'll look through the Flights tab, customizable weight and balance options, and practical applications for runway analysis, among other helpful features. You can ask questions during today's webinar using the Q&A panel on the side of your screen. We'll respond to as many questions in writing as we can during today's presentation, and we will also take a few of the more popular questions that come in and ask them live at the end. I will say it's a good idea to submit your questions as soon as you think of them. As we get toward the end of the webinars, the number of questions tends to go up, which makes it harder to respond to everyone. And lastly, today's webinar is being recorded and will be accessible at foreflight.com/webinars by this time tomorrow. With that, let's get started.
All right, so we are going to start on the Dispatch homepage, which we call the flights list. So here we've got just a list of all of our flights that are planned. These are from the scheduling system if you've got one connected, or maybe someone has come in here and started planning flights. So there's a few different ways to filter this view. We can take a look at the filing status of the flight. We can look at different time filters. Right now I'm looking at plus or minus 6 hours. We can sort by who created the flight, and then if we want to get really specific, we can set up a watch list. So if a certain dispatcher only wants to look at certain aircraft types or tail numbers, you can put that in. And then, of course, search is going to let you get even more granular than that. So today we're going to assume that our flight plan has already come over through scheduling, so we're just going to start with some of the details already filled in, but we are going to do the rest of the planning. So I've got our Honolulu to Toluca flight. I'm just going to go ahead and click Edit, and this will take me into the Flight tab. So as we can see, we've got the correct aircraft here, our Challenger 650, and we can see that it has runway analysis activated. We've got a weight and balance profile, at least one, set up, and we've also got fuel advisor. For departure destination, I can see I've got a warning here. I can click on that to get the pop-up and take a look at the NOTAM. I can also take a look over here at flight advisories to see all of the relevant items for this flight. We're planning this for today, departure at 9 o'clock local time. Maybe we need to enter in a call sign. So I'll go ahead and put that in. We've got our alternate put in. Maybe I'll just take a look though, make sure that the weather still looks good. So we've taken a look at our alternates, then we can go down to the fuel section. So here I can take a look at my climb, cruise, and descent profiles, and these are coming directly from the aircraft performance manual. If we're not sure exactly what we want to look at, we can open up the cruise advisor. And this will allow us to compare 3 cruise profiles at a time. This will show us our best time and also our best fuel. You can see we've got different altitudes here, winds, temperatures, and also turbulence indicator. So depending on the mission, of course, if you need to get there as fast as possible or if you need to conserve fuel, you can do that here. We can fill out the other relevant fuel fields, taxi fuel, if we need specific landing fuel, or if we want to plan with min fuel required. We can change those things as well. I'm not going to talk about Fuel Advisor today, but we do have a separate webinar on that as well. Moving down, we can see that our FBO is already selected. Now we get to the advanced fuel options. So depending on where you're operating in the world, you can choose a variety of different reserve fuel policies, and you can also create custom ones. For today, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this with our Part 91/135 option. We can specify contingency fuel if we need. And with the wind models today, since we're planning for today, I'm going to leave it with forecast. Moving down to the crew section, we can see that some crew has already been entered here from the scheduling system. If I need to change someone or add additional crew, I can do that here. And I can see that my 2 pilots are being included in the load section. We have, looks like 4 adults on board, but of course I can change that if I need to. Maybe we need to add a little bit extra cargo. I can do that here. And at this point, we're planning with our auto load tool. So that's our system taking a look at the weight and balance profile and just auto loading the aircraft based on what's best for the CG. Maybe we need to make some adjustments to this that are a little bit more detailed. So at this point, I would head over to the weight and balance tab. And in the weight and balance tab, we can see that currently we're planning with the 10 passenger configuration. And we can see where everyone is placed in the aircraft at this time. If we know, let's say that no one ever sits in left seat 1, we could maybe put them in to a different seat. As we make these changes, you can see on the right that our weight and balance envelope is updating. Everything is green and looking good, so no worries there. I just want to quickly mention that we do offer some curtailment options if that's something that your operation needs. And Josh, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So in the event that your operation requires curtailment, we allow you to use standard weights, which basically, if you are standard weight curtailed, then you are using the weights that are the male and female as defined in the settings of ForeFlight Dispatch. On the other hand, if you're just doing passenger curtailments, then basically what we're giving you is, in a worst case scenario, how much is the CG going to move fore or aft if the passengers are moving in flight. In addition to curtailment, as Caitlin mentioned earlier, we do auto-assign passenger positions, and there's 2 ways we do that. The default way to auto-assign passenger positions is by the best CG. So said another way, we take exactly where the CG is located for that flight, and then we put the passengers as close to that CG as possible so they have the least effect of moving it forward or aft. On the other hand, for those of us that have passengers that tend to sit in the same places all the time, or if you have 4 passengers, they sort of always end up sitting in these seats, we do offer load priority in the weight and balance configuration for the aircraft, which we won't get into today, but it's quite a simple process where you just set the priority as saying 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And then if you have 1 passenger, they go into load priority 1, 2 passengers, they'll go into 1 and 2, etc.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, and one other thing to point out here, you'll notice that we have this BOW tag. So the crew and some additional cargo aircraft items are being included in BOW, and you cannot modify them because they're part of the basic operating weight. So if you need to change those, you can set that up in the aircraft profile. Going back to the flight tab, if we scroll down past the crew and load sections, we have contingency planning. We've already input our ETP airports, but if you need for your operation, we also support ETOPS and adequate airports. Scrolling down to the route section, we do see the recommended route. This is our flight planning engine. We're going to take a look at winds, temps, aircraft performance, what's most likely to be cleared as filed, or Eurocontrol validated. And we're going to try to find the most time and fuel optimized route for you. For this flight, I know that I need a specific route. It's one I've flown before. So I've already got that input here, and maybe I know I'll get it again. So I can click this little icon and save the route. What you'll notice then is just below the recommended route, we've also got a new section called saved routes. So this is a great place to keep your company routes. So now that we've completed our preliminary flight planning, we can go over to the runway analysis tab. All right, so here in the runway analysis tab, we have all of our different airports collapsed right now, but we can open them up and take a look. What I love is that our system will automatically run these calculations in the background. So before I even got to this tab, I've got that green check that tells me I've got a good runway that's going to meet all of my needs for that flight. But if I want to take a look at the details, I can open it up like I have here. And at first we can see the weather. This is either coming from the METAR or the TAF. You could input custom weather if you needed to. And then we've got the aircraft configuration. So this is coming from the aircraft profile. Again, if you need to change that, depending on the conditions, you can do that. Moving down, we've got the runways. And one option that we have here is the ability to auto-select a runway and EOP for the best max takeoff weight. So I'll go ahead and turn that on. And then, Josh, do you want to talk about this runway view?
Sure. Thanks, Caitlin. So as Caitlin mentioned just a minute ago, we do select the best runway and EOP for maximum takeoff weight that's permissible from the airport. For those that may not be aware, EOP is engine out procedure. So that's what our runway analysis procedure is. As we can see in the list here of all the runways available in Honolulu, some are encoded with errors, some have red, some have green. I think it's pretty intuitive that the red messages are telling us that there's something that we want to tell the user. So as we can see here on these water runways, of course, they're not usable. This is a Challenger. We don't have floats or amphibs on the airplane, but it's basically telling us that there's no performance that's available for those runways that's permissible in this case. On the other hand, we have, say, runway 22 left just above that. We can see it has an error because there's a tailwind component of 12 knots when the limit on the Challenger is a tailwind component of 10 knots for that takeoff. So more than likely, that's not going to work today either based on that wind unless there's a wind change. Finally, just above that, we do have runway 4 right, which we can see has a maximum limit of 48,200 pounds. There's some green to our right telling us that we have a headwind, so that's good for us. And we know it's asphalt. We currently have the engine out procedure EOP1 selected, which is RNAV based. If we want to go down and look at the menu and see what other options are available, we can click there and we can see that we have another RNAV based EOP2. We have what I presume to be a VHF based EOP3. And then we have a straight out, which is not going to be usable today because it requires us to be under 41,578 pounds due to an obstacle limit. So if we want to take a look at EOP3, we can do that. We can see it's 48,200 pounds, so there's no weight hit to do that. And then we click on details, and we can see what does this have us doing. So it's basically looks like it's entirely VHF based, involves some DME and radials, and then a holding pattern off the Honolulu VOR. So to me, that sounds a little complex, but let's take a look at it in the map view. And we'll see what it looks like. So it looks like there's a turn, and we're going to intercept a radial, and then we're going to hold. On the other hand, let's go ahead and take a look at EOP1, which we initially had selected. It's RNAV based, so to me it sounds a little easier to fly, a little more simple, and let's take a peek at it. So essentially, we are just maintaining runway heading until the departure end of the runway, and then we're turning right to a fix called Alana, and then we're going to hold at Alana. And that sounds pretty good to me. I think I like that. We'll look at it in the map view. And that also sounds good. Looks like it's fairly straight out and a simple holding pattern. So let's go ahead and select that runway with that engine out procedure. Like Caitlin mentioned earlier, we do all these performance calculations for runway analysis in the background. If you don't want to go into the runway analysis tab, you in theory don't have to. We can see on the right-hand side under the performance tab that we have green check marks for runway analysis, which tells us just what you think it would. The runway analysis has been calculated and it's good to go. No issues with it. You're underweight and you can depart off of it, no problem. Or in the case of a landing, you can land on it, no problem. So now that we've set up our takeoff preferences, we'll go ahead and close out that section and we'll go into landing. Landing works just like takeoff. We auto select runways just like we did in the takeoff calculation. We can see that when we land in Toluca, we're planning on runway 15. We see that our limitation is 38,000 pounds structural. We also see that we have a closed tag over the runway in Toluca. If we wanted to, we also have that under flight advisories. We can see that there are certain operations the runway is closed for. If we click view NOTAMs, we can get more information on that. So we can see here that on certain dates, this runway is going to be closed during a certain time period. And now that we've done our landing calculations, we'll go ahead and collapse that one more time. And we can see just briefly, we also do the same calculations for our in-route alternate for ETP airports, as well as our landing alternate. Nothing different there, so we're not going to go into the specifics, but bottom line is that the runway analysis is calculated for all the airports that are going to be used on this flight or potentially may be used on it. Caitlin, back to you.
Thanks, Josh. One last thing I want to mention here is this generate report button. This is going to give you the ability to generate the runway analysis report. It's the same report that the crew is going to see on the iPads, and that's just going to give you a really nice breakdown of, again, the same information we're looking at here, but a little bit easier to review.
So some people prefer to see that report because at a glance, you get to see all the different weight limitations for each runway. So if, for example, a different runway has an obstacle limit of a lower weight, we'll be able to show that right on the report.
All right, moving over to the ATC data tab. Here we've got most of the information already filled out, but if we need to add some additional remarks, we can do that here. And something that is really handy for folks who want to keep track of this flight, but they're not actually on the flight. We don't want to consider them as part of the souls on board. We can add a flight watcher. So let's say that Brad wants to keep track of this flight. We add him as a watcher, so he'll get all the same correspondence about the flight, but again, he's not in the load, he's not a soul on board. So really handy for folks on the ground who want to keep track of flights. Scrolling down to the bottom of the page, we can see the flight plan that will be sent to ATC. I am not actually going to file this, but just so you can see what it looks like. You'll just get this prompt, are you sure you want to file? And for my operation today, let's say the pilots are going to file this. So I'm going to let them have that control. So I will just, at this point, save the flight. So I know that it looks right. Everything's going to go the way that it needs to. I'll just let the pilots make that final action. Since we are flying into Mexico today, we will take a look at the eAPIS tab. So depending on the type of flight, you can plan private or commercial. For today's flight, our flight type is private. So we need to go through all of these items. We've got our departure, destination. All of this is coming from the flight tab over here. But we need to fill out these other items. So for the aircraft operator, we'll go ahead and choose ForeFlight. And for our 24/7 contact, we'll choose John. And we've already got our CBP decal number. This is coming in from the aircraft profile. Then we can also choose our aircraft owner, any additional foreign landing airports if we need to. And as we get down, we need to make sure that our folks on board are correctly listed here. So we can see, again, we've got that green check. We can see that our crew are filled out correctly. They have all of the details that they need, the relevant documents. However, when we get into the passenger section, we can see passenger count does not match payload count. So when we were planning the weight and balance, we had four folks on board. So we'll go ahead and hit add passenger. If you've set up some passengers before, they will be in a database here. So I can go ahead and choose some folks. Go ahead and save and close that one. And we'll just continue adding our passengers here. We will notify you if a passport document is going to expire within 6 months. So some of that checking is, again, automated for you. And so we've got 3 here. Let's add one more. And we can just save and close, and we're ready to go. So it looks like all of their documents are still valid. We do have just passports listed here, but we also support other legal documents. Scrolling down to the very bottom here, we have review and submit. You can see with those green checks again, if our inbound destination airport is supported and if our outbound departure airport is supported. So we can see that they're both supported. So that means we're going to be submitting both the US and the Mexico submissions. So we can hit review and submit. And we can see our manifest here has been generated. We've got all of the details here. And then we would go ahead and hit that submit button. I'm not actually going to hit the button today, but you would get email confirmation and you would start getting those details coming in as well. One last thing to point out on the eAPIS tab, you'll see this tab no matter where you're planning. But what's important is to come down here and see if the country that you're planning from or to is supported. Even if it's not, you can still generate a GenDeck here. And so again, we've got our general declaration, we've got all of our details here. So you can still generate this form even if we're not submitting the eAPIS in our system. Josh, anything to add there?
So I think the only thing I'd add here is that while we do indicate supported or not supported, you'll see not supported if a country doesn't have eAPIS. So for example, if you're planning a flight into Japan and there is no eAPIS, it will still say not supported. However, as Caitlin pointed out, you can generate the GenDeck, and I do that all the time when we go into a country that doesn't have eAPIS, where I'll generate a GenDeck and I'll send it over to the handler or customs, as the case may be, and they're happy to receive that document with all the passenger information, all the crew information already essentially filled out, ready to go. So it's a really handy feature to have the eAPIS tab active all the time, regardless of your eAPIS submission status.
Great, thanks, Josh. So a couple more items I want to take a look at here. We have this actions tab, or depending on if you have a bigger screen, you'll just see the buttons, but we have this release item. You'll see here, I haven't actually clicked this button, but the flight is already released. We've got a timestamp down here at the bottom left that shows exactly when it was released. This is because we have a lot of automation set up within Dispatch. So if we go over to settings, and then we go into auto dispatch, you can turn auto release on, and then you can choose how many hours prior you want flight plans to be released. So even if there is not a human interacting with this flight plan, you can ensure that your crew is going to get their flight plans delivered to their iPads. So this is within less than 24 hours. So the system has already released this flight plan to the crew.
Yeah, in addition to that, Caitlin, something I use a lot for my operation is the auto refresh setting that we're seeing at the top of the screen. So as we can see in this case, we have auto refresh turned on. We're stopping the refresh at 6 hours. And what that means is once the flight has been released to the crew, they will still receive the latest and greatest weather and flight planning data. So the navlog and the briefing will be up to date. It's updated once every hour up to that interval that's specified below at the stop refresh. And that's really handy because if, as a dispatcher, if you plan the flight yesterday, but the crew, of course, wants to use accurate winds and have a good briefing for today, then automatically that briefing and navlog is generated with the most current up-to-date data. And as the pilots, then we're able to fly the airplane, have the great data that we want, have current NOTAMs, et cetera. And it's all automatic. No intervention at all is necessary from the dispatch side.
Yeah, definitely encourage folks to get in here. There are a ton of settings available, so you can really customize this to your operation. In the same vein, I just want to quickly touch on operational rules because I think that this is such a powerful piece of dispatch. So I've already got a ton of stuff in here, but I would encourage you to think about this like as business rules. Maybe we always want to avoid certain FIRs. Maybe we always want to have a landing fuel of a certain value. So if we have this list here, just kind of showing you what you've made, but if I just click add rule, it's just as simple as, let's say, custom navlog. And you can give it a name if you'd like. And we could say always. Maybe it applies to every single aircraft, every single flight plan, or if maybe different aircraft types have different flight plans, we can say if aircraft type is CL60, then set the custom navlog to ForeFlight logo and add the rule. When I'm done with that, it's filtering now just to the custom navlog rules that I have created. And you can see you might end up with quite a few rules in here, so you do have the ability to search and see. So it's just really powerful to set default taxi fuel, landing fuel, flight watchers, as we talked about earlier, default crew if a certain pilot always flies a certain aircraft. So there's a lot of power in here. We definitely don't have time to cover all of the other awesome settings that we have, but definitely get in there and take a look.
I think I'll throw something in here, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Kind of some real world. So what I typically use operational rules for is sort of specifying the things that are really always going to happen on a particular flight or on every flight. You know, for example, for my operation, going into our home airport, I have an alternate operational rule, which allows me to say when I'm going into Carlsbad, always set the alternate to San Diego Lindbergh. So if we wanted to create this, we would just say if the destination is KCRQ, and then we would add the alternate of KSAN. And we can see here that we can add routing if we want to. So whether we want the system to automatically generate routing, whether we want to go direct or manual routing, any of that is an option. And of course, we can specify the altitude that we want to go to as well. We'll leave the route as direct. And then at that point, we just need to name the rule, and then we'll be ready to save the rule. Some other things that I use for operational rules for is avoid countries. For example, right now, we don't want to overfly Russia. So we have a rule set up to always avoid Russia. Other options that I typically use is destination FBO. That's a really handy one because when I go into Teterboro, for example, I'm always using a specific FBO. Or when I go into San Jose, I'm always using a specific FBO. So that takes any of the need for selection completely out of my hands or out of the dispatcher's hands, and it's just automatically made for me. Some other real useful operational rules, fuel policy is another great one, where if I'm going into Hawaii, for example, I always want to land with, say, 6,000 pounds. So while my minimum fuel may be 4,000, I specify 6,000 for Hawaii.
Yeah, this is a lot of things that you can just set up that will really help prevent user error and just ensure that a lot of things are already set up without you even having to choose them. Quickly going back to the flight plan here, One thing to mention on the flights list, we have this eAPIS flag. So now that we have planned eAPIS, that's going to show up, just another visual indicator for you. Going back into editing the flight, I just want to quickly mention the briefing. So you can see we have the navlog as well. In the briefing, they're included together in a packet. At the top of the briefing, we've got the navlog or the operational flight plan. You can customize these in the settings. And then we've got as well the briefing information. So we've got all of our weather charts here, winds, temps, and turbulence, METARs, NOTAMs, all of that stuff that you guys are used to seeing, you'll be seeing here. So when we set the crew here in the flight plan and that release happens, all of that data that we've planned, the relevant documents, the briefing, all of this flight planning that we've done is now on the crew's iPads. With that, I will hand it back to Keith for Q&A.
Thanks, Caitlin. I want to show these links that are useful resources for you to learn more about dispatch. ForeFlight.com/dispatch is the best place to start. You can learn more about all the features that we've talked about here near the top. This is also where you can learn more about the new features that are constantly being added to ForeFlight Dispatch. The second link here will give you all you need to know about the ins and outs of dispatch using the ForeFlight Dispatch Guide. You can find it in the ForeFlight mobile app if you go to the Documents tab, click on the ForeFlight Drive, and then you'll find the Dispatch Guide. And lastly, if you have any questions about dispatch, what it can do for your operations, or really any questions about a ForeFlight business account, you can reach out to us at sales@foreflight.com. With that, let's move on to some questions. So Caitlin, first question came in, says, I was wondering if you have flight risk assessment tool, FRAT, incorporated into ForeFlight Dispatch, and how does it work?
Yeah, so we actually do have, and I think we might have this listed here. If not, if you take a look at Dispatch on the website, there is an integrations page that you can go to, and that will list all of our supported integrations. We do integrate currently with Pre-Flight Mitigator, Baldwin, and I think a few others. So I know for sure the way that one of those integrations works is that the risk assessment tool will grab your flight plan from dispatch, pull it into their system, run the risk assessment, and then you can review it and I believe attach it back to the file section of dispatch. So every integration might work a little bit differently, but yes, we do offer some. So take a look at that page on the website.
Excellent. Another question came in. Are you able to add multiple flight watchers?
You definitely can. I think what I did in the webinar was adding them manually, but you can use the operational rules within settings to set default flight watchers. So if the same people want to see all the flights or if certain people want to watch certain tails, you can set all of that up as an automation with the operational rules.
Another question. We had a couple of questions that seemed like a very popular topic when you were discussing eAPIS. Is the eAPIS information saved in ForeFlight to autofill when necessary? Can you talk a little bit more about the eAPIS kind of integrations?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was demoing today, we had already gone in and put those folks into our database. So at the moment, you will need to enter their information into eAPIS the first time. But once you do that, it's saved into our secure database. And I think there were some other questions as well about being able to import this via API or from other systems. That's not supported today, but that is something we're looking into.
Absolutely. Talking about the rules, examples, creating two rules for the same airport with different alternates. What occurs when you're setting up like a conflicting rule?
So the way the system works right now is if you set up two duplicate rules, what we'll do is when you generate that flight plan, basically we'll just pick the first one. So what we're working on right now is some logic to make that a little bit smarter so that you can't create those duplicates in the first place. So those improvements are coming soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Caitlin. I appreciate it. We, of course, for these webinars, we have quite a few people on these calls. We're not able to answer every question. So, Caitlin, I have on here the screen that says contact sales at foreflight.com. But I was curious if you could give another resource. Who would also be another person that some folks can reach out to? Is the best email, would that be team@foreflight.com?
Yeah, definitely. So sales at foreflight.com is the best place, especially if you're new, want to trial dispatch. But if you just want to get some more information, team at foreflight.com. I think we mentioned it in a few of the internal messages. Those we've got a 24/7 support team. They're incredible. So we will make sure to answer any questions you have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I want to thank the ForeFlight team members that are working behind the scenes to create this webinar, to make this happen and be a resource for all of our dispatch users out there. And lastly, I also want to thank you for joining this morning's webinar. There's a lot of great information and there's so much depth when it comes to dispatch. There's so many, just like ForeFlight Mobile, there are so many things to learn, and we're always constantly adding new features. So please stay tuned to to all of our communications regarding dispatch about new and improved products, new features. And like Caitlin mentioned, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact us at team@foreflight.com. With that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much again for joining us, and until next time.